Let's make a high-protein, plant-based, creamy sausage pasta. All right, this dish is like super easy. There's a lot of little pieces to it, but it's actually really easy and comes together very quickly.
We basically start with 3 parts. So our first part is the TVP part.
Right.
Obviously, we're going to be using TVP, which is textured vegetable protein.
We're using Bob's Red Mill, but you can use whatever one you want. I usually get whichever one's cheaper between Bob's and Anthony's on Amazon.
Half a cup, please.
Now, this is a huge protein source right here. It also really doesn't have much in the way of fat. Like this says 0 fat. There's actually a very infinitesimally small amount of fat in it. And it also has 4 grams of fiber, but it also has 12 grams of protein in a 1/4 cup. So that's per serving. Each person's getting 4 grams of fiber and 12 grams of protein. Next.
The Wonder Twins, garlic powder and onion powder. But this time, we're not doing even amounts of both. Oh no.
So how much onion powder?
1 teaspoon onion powder.
So what we're doing, TVP is kind of like tofu in that it's a sponge, okay? It is a soy-based product, but don't get freaked out. Soy doesn't have all the problems that some people claim it does.
2 teaspoons of garlic.
But what it does is it soaks up flavors that you add to it, and it needs to be rehydrated before you can use it. It's really one of my favorite mock meat replacements.
So the reason why we have uneven amounts of garlic and onion powder in this particular thing is we're trying to replicate the flavor of sausage.
Right.
We already have the texture of ground sausage because TVP does a great job with that, but we need the flavor.
But wait, there's more. What's next?
Fennel! We need a full tablespoon of fennel.
And I only have like that much left in a jar. It's probably close to a tablespoon. That's not enough, because to me, fennel seed is what makes Italian sausage taste like Italian sausage. I mean, it's funny is we don't like fennel the vegetable, either of us.
No.
But we love fennel seeds.
Yeah.
For extra flavor, if you want to, you can toast these ahead of time. We're not today. I sometimes do, but this gets cooked later too, so they are going to express some of their oils. And then
1 tablespoon of something that's in every Italian kitchen, and that's soy sauce.
Yep, because every Italian dish has soy sauce in it, right? The soy sauce is going to be our salt and umami. And you can go a little heavier if you want to. I think I'm just going to go with just a touch more than that tablespoon. It's hard to say. I'm eyeballing it. I'm also showing you that it's a forgiving recipe. Most cooking is a forgiving recipe. We used to measure everything out precisely in cups and stuff, and I realized that most of you are eyeballing most of this stuff, so why shouldn't we? Because that's how I really cook. I don't actually measure everything out. Some things I do, and we'll show you when I do.
There was also a lot more dishes for me to wash.
Yeah, made it more complicated all around. What's next?
Roughly half a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper.
Now, we always say fresh cracked black pepper, and there's a reason. If you buy the ground stuff, if you don't use it within a week or two, and even then, you don't know how long that sat on the shelf before you bought it, it loses a lot of its pungency and flavor. So just buy the little berries, put them in one of these guys, or even they sell ready-made grinders with it already. Either way is fine. You're gonna get a much better black pepper flavor.
1 teaspoon paprika.
I'm using smoked today, but you can use sweet, you can use smoked, whatever you like. 1 teaspoon. Mm-hmm. This is partially for flavor, but also partially for color.
1 teaspoon each of dried oregano and dried thyme.
The other Wonder Twins. Although sometimes it's basil. For sausage, I tend to use oregano more than I use basil, so we're gonna go with that. I pretty much put thyme in everything, so.
You can never have too much thyme.
Exactly, that's my line.
Olive oil. And the reason why we got our sprayer out is because we only need like a teaspoon of this.
By the way, these sprayers, we'll have them linked below. These are just awesome. We have 2, one for canola oil, one for olive oil. I don't use a lot of oil, and this helps me to keep the amount used to a minimum. But there are times when it's useful, like something like this, where I want a little bit of the fatty idea to it, but I don't need a ton of oil. It's so easy to take that bottle and pour a lot, where with this, like you saw, I had to do 4 or 5 sprays, and that's really all we're gonna do. And then
1 to 1.5 cups water.
And this is to hydrate it. Now, I said 1 to 1.5 cups because I'm gonna put in most of this first. The other day when I tested this, just to get a taste for how much exactly we needed, I did use the full 1.5, and you know what? I'm gonna risk it. Put the whole 1.5 cups in there. And I just wanna mix this up because you wanna make sure that the liquid gets to all of that TVP. Now, something that's really important to know is this looks like a real lot of liquid, and it's okay, because even if there's too much liquid, you can use it. It's all good. All those seasonings, they're really important for this dish. But the TVP is going to absorb a lot of that liquid and puff up. You don't want it to puff out of the liquid. You want it to stay in the liquid, so you're always going to have a little bit of extra. But set this aside for like 15 minutes or so. Another ingredient that needs a little bit of prep is frozen spinach. Now, if you want to use fresh, you totally can. This is 10 ounces of frozen spinach, which is probably like, I don't know, 18,000 cups of fresh spinach. I honestly don't know. I guess it would probably still be 10 ounces. That's a lot of fresh spinach.
We actually really like using frozen greens, and whenever I even harvest greens from our garden, I just go ahead and
parboil and freeze.
Right, because it just makes it so much easier to deal with, because fresh greens take up a lot of physical
and they
space.
spoil where frozen doesn't.
Right.
Now, here's how I deal with frozen spinach. Your way may vary. This works for me. You saw I just cut across the paper. So I take off as much of that paper as I can, because I don't really want that touching my food so much.
It's also treated with wax to make it more water resistant.
Oh, is it?
And so you really don't want that in your food either.
Okay. All the more reason to remove the paper. So I'll do a better job of removing the paper now. I don't normally go this far, but I will now.
But you can feel it now that I've mentioned it.
Yeah, now that you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, this is waxy. I don't want that. All right. And then take that, put it in a microwave safe bowl, pop it in the microwave for about 4 to 5 minutes until, well, you'll see when it's done. The next step, if you're making a pasta dish, is pasta. And today we're going to be using Carbe Diem pasta. Now, it's kind of designed for more of a keto or a low carb diet. And well, I happen to be diabetic, and we like to keep those carbs a little bit lower when we can and try to get more fiber into our diet. So that's where this stuff comes in. But listen to this. By the way, did you know that a 2-ounce serving of pasta is actually the appropriate size serving? For years, I scoffed at that, and then we started doing it, and I was like, that's actually quite a bit when you cook it and do it all of it. We're going to be using that serving size today, but just so you understand, a serving size is 2 ounces of this, 110 calories, 0.5 grams of fat. There's very, very little fat in this. It also has 24 grams of fiber and 8 grams of protein. So this is important if you're looking to get that high protein like we claimed in the dish. It actually, the whole dish per serving actually has 36 grams of protein. I figured it out. It's kind of amazing. But this stuff is very close to a regular wheat pasta in flavor and texture. Some of them that we've tried, not quite so good, but this one actually works really, really well. So I'm gonna measure out 4 ounces. Oops, got a little too much. Those extra 4 pieces, you know, they made a difference. But it is actually 12 ounces in a box. So for us, that's a lot, because that's like 3 meals for us out of 1 box. And they make fettuccine and spaghetti too.
Yeah, and that's the thing to take in consideration when you're price comparing these things. Lots of times, the pastas that we find at our grocery store aren't this size of container.
Yeah,
so
they're 16 ounces.
You want to compare ounce to ounce when doing price
This is going to be more expensive than a regular pasta, I will just tell you that right now. But I think it has more going for it than a regular pasta.
Right, you also want to compare nutrients to nutrients as well.
Exactly, right. So it also, something else that I want to say about this particular shape. Each shape is a little bit different when you cook them. When you cook it, it says 13 to 15 minutes. If you cook this for 13 to 15 minutes and then add it to this dish, it's going to be mush. So I'm going to cook it for 5, maybe 6 minutes. When I tested this the other day, I did 7 or 8, and it was a little overcooked because the dish does kind of cook again. So I'm going to go 5 minutes today, maybe 6, and we'll go from there. But you can cook this pasta right now if you want to, and then just strain it when it's ready, and then we add it later on. And if you're gonna make a creamy sausage pasta, you gotta have a sauce, right? And we're not making no tomato sauce today. We're making a cashew cream-based sauce today. So I have a 1/2 cup, and I always do a little bit of a rounded 1/2 cup when it comes to cashews, because, you know, there's a lot of air in between those. So, you know, yeah, if it was pieces, it would fill a 1/2 cup.
It's Brian logic.
It's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So 1/2 cup cashews. What's next?
2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Yes, we repurposed the basil jar for our
Yeah,
nutritional
because
yeast.
it has a shaker top and everything that I always just unscrew.
Yeah, we never use it.
Yeah. 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Now, this adds some flavor, a little almost like a cheesiness to it, but it's an umami, really, is what it does. And it adds protein. Nutritional yeast has a lot of protein in it, actually.
A pinch of salt and some fresh ground black pepper.
Now, this dish needs a little bit of salt because sausage is salty, okay? So I'm just gonna do like 2 pinches. I don't wanna get crazy. You can always salt more at the table, but you can't take salt out if you oversalt.
For those of you who love, I forget the word, but the study of words and their origin, sausage is actually based on its root of
Salt.
for salt.
Yep. And salt is based off of salary, which is how the Roman soldiers were paid in salt. All right, fresh cracked black pepper. How much are we putting in there?
It's to taste.
To taste. So since I haven't tasted it yet, I'm just gonna go with like, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. We like pepper.
We do.
It's good.
We really do.
All right. Next.
The Wonder Twins! Garlic powder and onion powder back on the scene, this time in even amounts. A teaspoon each, please.
Back on the scene, huh? When you introduce something 15,000 times, after a while, you just have to come up with unique ways of describing it.
Yeah.
You know? It's all good. And if you go a little over on the seasonings, it's okay. You just add more flavor. Yeah, it gets dusty.
I have been known to accidentally inhale some of these powders, particularly the nutritional yeast, because I'm the person who refills this container.
Because usually I'm in the middle of cooking and I need it right now and I'm stirring something.
If you do that, be very careful because...
Pasta's ready. Okay, we're back to the sauce.
That's right, and with that we need our liquid, and today we're using veggie broth because flavor, it's important. 1.5 cups, please.
This veggie broth has a story, by the way. It's the very first video on this channel. It's made from scraps. Whenever you cut an onion or celery or mushrooms, all the little bits and pieces, we throw it in a bag, keep it in the freezer, and once every few weeks or once a month, put it in the Instant Pot. There's a video on how to do that. But yeah, it's actually really good stuff. Look at that color. I mean, it's amazing.
It's fantastic.
Oh, it smells just incredible. And I'm putting it all in because I know something about the way cashew cream sauces work. And that is, if it's too runny, give it a minute in the pan. It won't be anymore. So not a problem. And I'm just gonna blend this till smooth. Just one more thing of note. If you are not using a high-speed blender like a Vitamix or the other one that I can't think of at the moment, you want to soak your cashews either for several hours or overnight, or you want to pour boiling water over them and keep them moist for about 10 to 15 minutes. That should help soften them up. But with a Vitamix, we don't worry about it. Just gonna blitz this up until it's smooth. So, about a minute and our sauce is done. It's pretty liquidy. Let me show you what that looks like. As you can see, it's very liquidous, and that is okay. Don't worry about it. But for now, I'm just gonna put the lid back on the sauce and set it to the side because we don't quite need it yet.
What we do need is to continue our prep. So for that, we have mushrooms.
Remember when I was talking about the broth and all the little bits and bobs that we cut off? Like that little piece of the stem. I don't want that in my meal, but I don't mind its essence being extracted and put into a broth. And I just cut all the little pieces off those stems. And we're just gonna slice up our mushrooms. Can you put them into chunks? Sure. Can you make them really big pieces if you want? Absolutely. I like slices for this though. Just maybe 1/4 inch slices or so you know you're chewing something, you know. If you go too thin, mushrooms tend to get lost in a dish like this. All right, mushrooms are done. Stick them in a bowl, put them to the side.
Next up is an onion.
I'm not gonna do that weird trick where you like smash it down the table and it's already sliced up. I'm really cooking here, you know? So I'm gonna cut the end off and the other end off, and those go to the broth pile. Then cut it in half and then peel off the rest. It's a little tedious sometimes. Just, get it off there, get down to clean onion.
And if you got mushroom leavings on your knife and cutting board, it's all right. They're going to be cooked together.
Yeah. Plus, there's no such thing as cross-contamination when it comes to plant-based food. At least not for things like this. There's just nothing to contaminate. And I'm just going to cut slices, like maybe 1/8 inch or so. This is much easier to do when you're standing up. We sit for these videos so that we can frame ourselves better and we're a little closer to the camera, but it's so much easier to do when you're standing up. Yes, I normally cook standing up. But I'm also like a foot taller than her, so it would be really awkward for us to be standing next to each other on camera.
I have to be on a little
We'd
box.
have to get a block or something for you to stand on. Onions in the same bowl with the mushrooms. All of them. No onion left behind. I should get a t-shirt that says that. And now we're gonna head over to the stove and we're gonna start cooking all of this up. But before we get to the stove, Derica reminded me that I still had to show you something with the spinach. So this got microwaved for 4 minutes. And now I can open the box and I can just dump that out. But I don't wanna just dump it right into the water that's in the bottom here. Dump it into a sieve. And then grab a little spatula and scrape out all the leavings in there because you don't want to leave any. Yep, she's got me saying it all the time now. And then I like to give this a little bit of a squeeze because see how that liquid that's coming out? I don't want to water down our pasta too much, especially not with spinach water. Just doesn't sound as good as you might think it should be. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to throw this stuff away and they'll use it for other things. Go for it. We don't tend to do that. But I guess you could water plants or something with it if you really wanted to.
You can put it in smoothies if you're not offended by that sort of thing. You could do lots of stuff with it.
Yeah. And now I'm just going to get it all off my hands because I'm starting to get a little bit offended by that. Anyway, I'm going to do that and then we'll meet you over at the stove. Okay, so we're over at the stove and I have my pan on about medium heat. Get out my olive oil spray and just spritz the pan a little bit just to keep it from sticking. Then in go the mushrooms and onions. You should hear some sizzle. If not, your pan's not hot enough yet. Grab some tongs and move everything around. Now at this point, I like to add a little bit of salt to help extract some of the liquids out of the onions and the mushrooms. Just a little. If you don't like cooking with salt, you can pretty much omit it from this recipe completely and it'll still be fine. I would use the soy sauce in the meat mixture, but other than that, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm going to let this cook for probably 5 to 10 minutes. After about 10 minutes or so on medium heat, I'm moving it around a lot too. You can see the mushrooms shrunk down a little bit. They got some color. The onions are starting to break down a little bit. At this point, I'm going to add in our TVP mixture. Now, as you can see, it's still very, very liquidous. That's okay. That's all flavor. We're going to add that flavor in and we're going to cook out a lot of that liquid. Give that a stir through. I'm keeping the heat on medium. It'll come right back to temp in just a minute. At this point, I'm also going to add in our spinach and just break that up a little bit. Okay, break it up a lot. Mix that through as well. We bought a hex-clad pan, the 10-inch size. This is actually the 12. We bought a 10-inch because a friend of ours got one and she loved it. She said it was just the best pan she's ever used and nothing stuck to it. Thanks, Sarah. And I was like, all right, I've been looking at these things for a long time. Finally pulled the trigger and got one. And within 2 weeks, I ordered the 12-inch because they're just that good. We will have links to those in the description below if you wanted to get your own set. Yeah, we do get a little bit of a commission if you purchase through our links, but it does help the channel and keep us going making all these recipes for you. I'm just going to cook this down for a few minutes before we add the sauce. Okay, it's been just a couple minutes, and what I want to do now is sprinkle on a little bit of flour. This is just plain old white flour. It's about 2 tablespoons. What this will do is help to thicken up that sausage a little bit, and it'll help with the sauce when we add it in later. Not that it needs a lot, but I like to have a little extra insurance in there. It does soak up some of that excess liquid a little. I waited until the contents of the pan were pretty much hot already. That way it'll do a little bit of its thickening thing. It holds the sausage pieces together just a little bit, giving it more of that impression of, actual sausage. And now we're going to add our sauce. And I'm just going to dump it all right in and let it drip. It's your sauce. You paid for it. Make sure you get it all. And then turn the heat down. I put it down to low, like 1, because this will thicken up super fast if it's hot. And I want to give it a little bit of a chance to get all that goodness in there. Okay, now that we have it more or less mixed through, time to add in the pasta. And then we just mix that through. Do you see what I mean about the sauce looking really loose right now? It won't in just a couple of minutes as it cooks. Cashew cream tends to get really thick super fast. All right, so now that I have it in there, I know I turned it all the way down to low. I'm gonna turn it up just a little bit to cook off some of that excess and get it to thicken up. So I have it at like 3 out of 10 now. So it'll just be a little bit more heat to help it thicken nice and slow. You want kind of like a gravy consistency. And I'll just cook this for a couple more minutes and we'll see you at the table for a tasting. Time for the best part of every cooking show. Well, for us anyway, because we get to taste this now. Now, we tested this the other day and it was amazing. This time, it looks every bit as good as the other day. Try to get a little bit of...
It smells delicious right up front. You get that rich, earthy, creamy... I don't know how you can smell creamy, but it smells creamy to me. I don't know. Sensation before you even get it in your mouth. And I think part of that is the visual appeal.
Yeah.
The spinach really breaks up the monotony of the cream sauce and the pasta and the onions and the mushrooms being brown, 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 brown. So that pop of green really makes it more visually appealing.
Yeah, it also adds a little bit of nutrition, you know. You're getting 5 ounces of spinach each. Think Popeye, you know. But this, wow. It just tastes so good. There's not a lot to say on this one. It just tastes amazing.
It tastes like it has way more fat than it actually has.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, cashews do, but you're only getting about a quarter cup of cashews per person in this, so it's really not that bad.
Yeah, I know this isn't a low-fat dish.
No, it's not.
But it tastes like that super rich, decadent...
It really does. It tastes like there's heavy cream in this.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, let's talk storage options. You can take this as cooked, put it in a container, and put it in the fridge, and store it for, I'd say, a week, maybe 10 days. You can also freeze it, and it'll last months. Or eat it right now, because I just want to point something out. The amount that I made is 2 servings. That was 2 ounces of pasta each. That's it.
So the best storage method is in your belly.
It absolutely is. So if you're looking for a high protein after work meal that you can make in just a few minutes, make this. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on
The Bistro.